Hey, Shalom Akim Shalom, Yabashimal Shai, Brakathum to my dear brothers out there, little amount of sisters out there holding down the word of the Heavenly Father in spirit and in truth. All right, before we start though, let's give all praise to our God, our power, Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Harakak Wadash. Double honor to the apostles over there, great millstone and peace and mercy to the elect. As brethren know, and what's hot right now in the Israel's press, you had this brother run into the members of Sakari, and they had a pretty good dialogue, just going back and forth with each other, talking about things concerning the scriptures. All right. And one of the many things that they talked about was dealing with the head coverings, which the brother told them that they shouldn't be prophesying with their head covereds. And the brothers had the Sakari brothers had a rebuttal towards that. And what it made me do was look into it, Actually went in depth. Actually, it was hurting my head just looking into it a little bit. But nonetheless, the Spirit of Yahweh Shemel Shai led me to some good articles and some good points on why Paul said not to cover your head. Because as the members of Sakari was going into, that it's not a law where it says, don't cover your head. And when you actually look into the law, it's not a law, So then it makes you go into your mind of why did Paul say that? Okay. And in this lesson, I'm going to show you why Paul said not to cover your head. All right. But before we start, though, let's go right here to the book of Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 14 and 33. It says, "For the Heavenly Father is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all the churches of the saints." So the first thing I want to do is establish is that when Paul was saying to not cover your head, and he was giving an order on what the man and the woman was, the behind of what he was saying was to show forth no confusion, because confusion could easily pop up. With how you're dressed, how the woman is dressed, how the man is dressed, and how you're carrying yourself, your attitude. So what Paul would do with the establishment of the churches, all of us have to remember that the churches back then was in that Gentile state of mind. They was coming out of the ways of the customs of the heathen. So Paul had to address a lot of things to eliminate confusion. You know what I mean? And that's what Paul would do when he'll write these letters. So a lot of things that Paul wrote, it may not have necessarily been written in the first 5 books of Moses, but it was eliminating confusion amongst the church. Things that was at the time popping up, situations at the time popping up, or things, even to this day, there's things that pop up now where the apostles address us on, look, this is how we eliminate this confusion. Everybody has to stop doing this, or everybody has to stop doing that. Well, Paul would do the same thing back then. So a lot of things he would write will eliminate confusion. Now, dealing with, let's go to 1 Corinthians, the 11th chapter where the brothers was going into. It says, 1 Corinthians 11 and 1, and then we're going to, I'm kind of hiding it, but I'm building it up. But then we're going to start going into what Paul meant. Why was he saying that to the Corinthians not to cover their head? So this is 1 Corinthians 11 and 1. It says, "Be ye followers of me, even as I also am of Yahushua. Now I praise you, brethren, that ye remember me in all things, and keep the ordinances as I have delivered them unto you." You see, so Paul was, basically setting up protocols for the churches to keep them, by all means necessary, to the best of his ability, to keep them on the right path. Okay? Just as today you see Apostle Tahar when he said, don't be on Facebook, you know what I mean? Now, is there a law that say don't be on Facebook? That you ain't going to find that in the Torah, But it eliminated the confusion that came with being on Facebook, you see? So it was a good order. You know what I mean? But it says, but I will have you know that the head of every man is Yahweh Shai, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Yahweh Shai is the Heavenly Father, Yahweh. It says, every man praying or prophesying having his head covered dishonoreth his head. All right. Now, why would Paul go on to say a man that cover his head dishonoreth his head? Well, then when I was looking into it, let's get into this right here, dealing with what I typed in on Google was, why did Paul write 1 Corinthians 11:4? And I ran into this BibleReef.com little article, blog, whatever you want to call it. And in this article, it states a lot of good points on why Paul said that. You're going to find out that the reason why Paul was saying not to do that, because you know what? We're going to read it. We just got to read it. It says, what does 1 Corinthians 11:4 mean? It says, Paul has established the principle that everyone has a head, which we know we read it in 1 Corinthians 11:3. Yahweh Shai is, the Heavenly Father is the head of Yahweh Shai. Yahweh Shai is the head of the man, and the man is the head of the woman. So he established the order. It says, Paul has established the principle that every person has a head. Yahweh Shai is the head of man. Husbands are the head of their wives. The Heavenly Father is the head of Yahweh Shai. While this could not be reference to authority, Paul seems more focused on the sense of having a representative. Now, before we proceed on, I do want to grab this verse because we believe that Paul is a man of the Lord. So much so that he writ majority of the New Testament, the letters to the churches, man. The Heavenly Father was dealing with Paul heavy. So Paul said this in 1 Corinthians 14:37. It says, if any man think himself to be a prophet or spiritual, let him acknowledge that the things that I write unto you are the commandments of the Lord. But if any man be ignorant, let him be ignorant. Now, a lot of things Paul said, or certain things, not a lot, but certain things Paul said, like these other groups, Sakari, they'll say you can't find that in the Torah, so they don't follow it. But Paul just wrote in the 37th verse, it says, let him acknowledge that the things that I write unto you are the commandment of the Lord. You know? So even though you may not have found in the Torah, when Paul would say certain things, it was as if the Lord was giving a commandment, man, through Paul. And this advice or these protocols that Paul would bring forth eliminated confusion. You know, it established a better order to keep brethren on the right track. So when guys say, well, that Paul was just a man and he just wrote that, you got to be spiritual and look at Paul like he said, if any man be spiritual, let him acknowledge that the things that I write are the commandments of the Lord. You got to look at it as if Yahweh Shai is commanding you. Right? So now let's go a little further now. You know, I've been talking quite a bit, building it up. But now let's go a little further on why Paul was saying that to the churches. Okay? So it says back in this article, it says, Paul has established the principle that every person has a head. Yahweh Shai is the head of men. Husbands are the head of their wives. Yahweh is the head of Yahweh Shai. While this could be a reference to authority, Paul seems more focused on the sense of having a representative, right? Everybody has their representative, right? It says, for us men, Yahweh Shai is our representative. And for you women, us men are your representatives. It says in the verse that follow, Paul does not say much about the authority of the one who is the head. Instead, he focused on how each of us, man and woman, can bring shame on our spiritual head by what we do with our physical heads and physical appearance during group worship times. So what Paul was saying, was that, look, the way you dress, the way you look, your attitude could bring shame on you. Your physical could bring shame on your spiritual. You see, so as we go on further, it's going to show you that Paul will explain that back then it was a custom. If a man he covered his head when he was prophesying and everything, he dishonored his spiritual head, which was Yahushua. You see? So that custom back then, that was real. How you looked represented, it could bring forth shame. It could bring forth shame on how you look. So a woman having her head uncovered brought forth shame to the man. You see? So the same thing with us men. Paul was saying, look, the way you look, you got to present yourself correctly. The way you look is bringing forth shame to your spiritual head. Your physical is bringing forth shame to your spiritual. Now, let's get a quick precept here. And when you jump to the book of Ecclesiasticus 19:29, it says, a man may be known by his look, and one that have understanding by his countenance. When thou meetest him, a man's attire and access lever and gait show what he is. So that's what Paul was saying was of a truth. How you present yourself and how you look show forth who it show forth the inner. You know what I mean? And you could be bringing forth shame on how you look and appearing before the church or before Israel. You see? So it goes on further to say in this article, it says, honor and shame are fundamental aspects of Jewish and Roman cultures of Paul's day. So, it was a thing back then. You don't want to be shameful. Honor and shame was important back then. It ain't like today. It ain't like today where people are very shameless. They don't really care about honor and respect. Back then, honor and respect was held in high regard. Shame and honor was held in high regard. It says success in life was thought to bring honor to a person's family or other group. Women and children especially felt the pressure not to dishonor the head of the family and how they behave in public. More so than in the modern era, physical appearance was tied to honor. Those who were dishonored were often marked by their clothing or hair. In the era without billboards and neon signs, clothing and hairstyle were also used to signal social and even sexual concepts. So the way you carried yourself showed who you were, how you thought, how you think. Like we read in the Ecclesiastes. A man may be known by his look. So back then, how a person looked told you a lot. And that goes still to this day. If I see a woman walk down the street and she has booty shorts on, she has the cum umbrellas, the long eyelashes, she has a very colorful hair set, and she has her chest poking out, well, that let me know that woman is a prostitute. Or she's sexually, she wants to have some sex with somebody, you know what I mean? Or she's a whore because of the way she dressed. So back then, on how you dressed and how you presented yourself it could bring forth honor or it could bring forth shame. You see? So jumping back to how Paul said to not cover your head, he was saying, look, you bring it forth shame to your head, which is Yahushua. So if you cover your head, you bring forth shame to your head, which is Yahushua. So it was more of a custom it was more of what was going on in society, how they carried themselves in society, man. Now, as we go on further, it's just going to get a little more juicier. It says, speaking into that culture, in that context, Paul warns the Corinthian Christians, every man who publicly prays or prophesies in their meetings together with his physical head cover, dishonor his spiritual head, who is Yahushua. You see? So the way you carried yourself was important. And that's the reason why Paul stated that. The way you carry yourself. So even though you may not go in the Torah and find that it say don't cover your head, Paul was stating something that shows forth a proper appearance on how you supposed to be presenting yourself before the Lord. You know? Now it says, every man who publicly prays or prophesies in their meetings together with his physical head covered dishonors his spiritual head, who is Yahushua. Context, as always, is the key to interpreting this statement correctly, as with all Paul's commandments in his letters. It says, first, the verse implies it was common in the early Christian for both men and women to prophesy during services. Some scholars understand this to mean that they were proclaiming supernatural revelations from the Heavenly Father. Others see the word prophesy to mean proclaiming more general Christian guidance and instructions. Paul doesn't give deep details in this passage. It says, in either case, Paul writes that for men to pray or prophesy in certain ways brings shame to Yahushua. The Greek phrase is katafisa. I wouldn't know how to say it. Kata, keflis, eknon, having down from the head. That's what that means. It says, is the literal translation, most often rendered in English as with his head covered. What exactly this means depends greatly on the context one places on Paul, reference to head in the section. It says some understand this phrase to describe having long hair. Others suggest some men in Corinth had started wearing feminine head coverings. You know? It says it was also possible Paul is describing the practice of Roman men in their pagan worship services, man. So we know that we lost them Israelite foreigners, in that Gentile state of mind, they lost themselves. So you can only imagine how they were bringing in those Roman feminine customs amongst the church. And a lot of them had to be wearing their hair like women wear their hair. They was wearing headdresses that a woman wears. You see? And Paul, you just got to imagine, because it's going on today. Certain men out there wear their hair like women. Certain men out there wear their head, certain coverings. It looks just like a woman's covering, man. So you have to imagine that back then, Paul was seeing that. He was like, man, y'all dishonoring the Lord on how you're presenting yourself in appearance. You know? Matter of fact, you dishonoring Yahushua on how the way you're dressing your head is showing forth shame to your actual spiritual head, which is Yahushua. You see? So that's why Paul, he just eliminated that confusion. He just wrote, look, man, don't cover your heads. All right? Because, you know, it's just you bringing in pagan customs and looking feminine as hell. And yes, man, a lot of times when you have that long hair like that, it do be looking feminine. Straight up, man. You know? I done been, you know, out and about, you know, and I've seen men. At first, I couldn't tell it was a man until he turned around or something. But his hair, the way I may be here looking at his back, the back of his head. You know, couldn't see his whole body. You know, but I was looking at the back of his head before I could really get a whole look at who, you know, his whole silhouette or who, you know, and I was like, damn, is that and then he turned around, it's a fucking man, it ain't even a woman, but he was wearing his hair like that to where it looked like a woman, you know? So Paul's saying, look, man, to eliminate all that, just don't cover your fucking head. You're bringing forth shame. You see? So yeah, man. And then, man, hey, you know, we've been taught our elders that came, our elders that's here today, the apostles and their elders, and how they did this thing all the way up to Elder Albert Bivens. They wasn't covering their head, man. So why go against that? Fuck it. Let's just stay it in line, right? Keep it in the spirit. You know? But hey, man, you know what I'm saying? Like Paul said in that Corinthians, if you want to be ignorant, let him be ignorant still. Right? So going on further, it says, others suggest some men in Corinth had started wearing feminine head coverings. It's also possible Paul is describing the practice of the Roman men in their pagan worship services. It says pulling their robes over their head in a sign of humility before their gods. Paul does not directly say any of these are happening in the Corinthians church service. He merely states that it will bring shame to Yahushua if men were to do whatever it is. Exactly. He is referring to further verses will fully provide additional information which helps to provide an answer. So he's saying, look, you know, it ain't stated that the Corinthian church was doing that, but how do we know that it was going down like that? Because it happens today. You see these other camps and the way they present themselves before the Lord, man. It's like they bringing in that pagan customs. So it was going down back then. Jake was coming out of a Gentile mind state. They had to be reproved and they had to be set in order. It says, now right here it says commentary, it says context summary. It says 1 Corinthians 11:2-16 describes Paul's correction of an inappropriate practice of some women in the Corinthian church. Contrary to social norms of the area, they were not wearing head coverings when praying or prophesying before the church. Paul insists that both women and men consider what their chosen appearance implies about their relationship with the Heavenly Father. So Paul was saying, look, man, you got to present yourself correctly. It says cultural details may vary, but the principle does not. Christian men and women ought to be respectable in their manner of dress. Read that again. Christian men and women are to be respectable in their manner of dress. In parallel, this teaching also touches on the concept of spiritual leadership. We're building a leadership right now. We have to like wear everybody that come in under us, even from us coming in to everybody that come in under us. We got to present ourselves correctly, man. You know, so it can eliminate all confusion. So what did Paul write? What did Paul write for the woman? 1 Timothy 2:9. It says, in like manner also that the women adorn themselves in modest apparel, with shamefacedness and sobriety, not with broidered hair or gold or pearls or costly array, but which becometh women professing godliness with good works. So he was like, you present yourself modest. Cover your head and present yourself modest. It eliminates confusion. You know? It eliminates bringing shame to the church. Next thing you know, Jake liked the way a certain man's woman hair look, and he starts to lust after her, and then there goes adultery being fulfilled, right? Now it says chapter summary. It says Paul confronts two issues in the church in Let me read it again. It says Paul confronts two issues the church in Corinthians was failing to practice correctly. First, some women were not wearing head coverings while praying or prophesying in their meetings. Paul insists they must do so, and that men must not baste on mankind's relationship to God and the social implications of that covering. Second, Paul described the reasons for observing the Lord's Supper and how it should be done. The Corinth Christians had brought God's judgment on themselves for practicing communion in a way which dishonored Yahweh's sacrifice for sin and humility, the poor amongst them, and the poor amongst them. So Paul was like, look, y'all got to present yourself correctly before our God, man. You got to present yourself correctly, man. The way you look and how you're moving, your attitude, your appearance is a lot. You know, like that article said, the way a person looks determines if you could read, you could halfway see what kind of spirit is on that person. If I see a dude walking down the street and he's switching like a woman and he got makeup on his face and he got his hand in that little outward fashion, and he has a little shirt on with tight pants, of course I'm gonna be like, man, that guy right there, he's Leviticus 20:13. You know what I mean? So even with appearance was important. It was important with appearance. And that's why Paul was going into when he prophesies and pray to uncover his head, because it dishonors Yahweh. And a woman, which Yahweh is the head of the men. And then a woman needs to cover her head because she dishonored her men. It was a custom, a practice back then that showed honor and shame. So I pretty much tagged everything in the spirit of Yahweh Shema Shai. I hope that was edifying. Once again, like Paul said, if they want to be ignorant, let them be ignorant still. Fuck it, man, But at the same time, man, over here at Great Millstone, we've been ordered to follow what Paul wrote. You know what I'm saying? And there's no problem with it, because I'd rather not dishonor my Lord Yahweh. I would take my hat off when I'm praying and prophesying. And then when I'm out and about and I'm in my daily life, I may wear my hat. You see? That's easy. But at the end of the day, 1 Corinthians 14:33, for the Heavenly Father is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all the churches of the saints. Shalom, Makim Step. Shalom.